to highlight that highlight the interconnectedness of climate to racial justice to universalized oppressions rooted in colonialism. The 13th in particular was emerged as an action or a challenge to the living out of what we consider the tenets, what we call the 3 tenets of the 13th framework, which is the internationalism, acknowledging colonial legacies, and activist solidarity. And within this is an understanding of how everything is interconnected and interdependent when we see and understand social justice issues. And it's from this base that we've kind of tackled the different topics as we do, and insist that any work that's dealing or acknowledging or dealing with climate work or climate justice has to have these core parts, these core tenets in the midst of them. Otherwise, it's doing the same and it's repeating the same. For those who know me and RGN, our work definitely centers or pushes around colonial legacies, and with that in mind, Kenya and again for me as a place where I was born and I was bred is one of the topics that we tackled last time, and I'm also doing obviously like studying and trying to highlight some of those injustices and some of those connections. But it gives me a great honor to invite Asuwa and Githuku, who we have done work with over the years, one of them being Decolonizing Education Kenya. For those who've watched the documentary, you'll probably witness and see images of and videos of Irene and Githuku, and to have them here to share and give us their insight and knowledge is brilliant. And so that's kind of where this was coming from. And for some of they will do their own introductions in terms of a little bit of what they've done and what they're involved in. But I should say that the 3 tenets sit, and the way we're going to analyze and look at this is very much from a perspective of how the 13th, as I said, with these 3 tenets, if we can remember them, how it sits and connects with the work that they're doing in Kenya as activists, social scientists, and all of the other, how they identify themselves. So that's where we're starting from. So Irene, just as a small brief one, is a social scientist who's enthusiastic about ecological issues, works with communities to amplify voices and actions on ecological issues. Githuku is rooted in African custom and tradition and uses his talent as an artist, playwright, actor to defend and advocate for human rights. And I should add, he's also standing for elections in Kenya this year. So it's also great that he's able to be here with us, because I know he's been on a campaign trail. I'm seeing videos and other things that he's doing. So for him to be able and available for us this evening is great. And yeah, I will I'll stop there. And I will start off by actually, asking Irene, I think I'll start with you, to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing and what you're involved in, and also move on to talk about how the colonial legacies, as we talk about them, relate to climate justice in Kenya. It's over to you.
Thanks, Penny. My name is Irene Asuwa. I am a social scientist, very passionate about ecological issues. So I co-convene a collective of community groups in Nairobi for now and part of the Lake region. So what we basically do is mobilize and organize communities through reclaiming spaces. So reclaiming spaces that have either been grabbed or are heavily polluted, rehabilitating them and transforming them into spaces that people can use, or that other parts of nature can have a chance to heal. And so these spaces are either riparian lands, community grounds, schools, and any other space that we can get. Again, this is also very highly dependent on how the land tenure of that place is, because land is a very big and emotive issue, and also very lethal as well in this part of the country. So the other thing that we do
I think, Irene, it's dragging on a little bit. I don't know whether it's just me, whether it's easy to do, to put the video off and make it better.
That we started centers, and this is to stand in the gap of. Okay, is it better now? Okay. Is it better? Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Everybody, welcome to the.
Okay. So where did I stop? Yeah, I was talking about the
ecological. So this is the conversation with Esther Stanford-Hose from the race.
Could somebody mute that mic, or the people who are hosting, please? Just gonna ensure that we've muted all the other screens, please. Thanks. Go on, Asuwa.
Yeah, so this is to stand in the gap for history that has been erased and is slowly being erased even at the moment in school, in the school curriculum. So we are trying to put spaces where people can access literature that is not out in the public or they can't find in school. So next month we are doing a book drive for those resource centers, but also just to create spaces where people can come and read and have discussions and just hang out, because such spaces are very rare, and the ones that exist, we call them bays, which are like along the road or in the markets or wherever they are. A lot of young people get profiled, so those spaces are very dangerous. So the resource centers is also to create a safe space where people can come, access internet, and just do things without being profiled by police. So yeah, that's what I do. And I also support outreach at Ukombozi Library, which is in Nairobi as well. And Ukombozi Library puts together, again, literature that is not easily accessible. So on Kenyan struggles, African struggles, struggles of people of African descent outside the continent, and many other struggles. So we work with communities to access this literature, to screen films, and to support Ukombozi forums. So Ukombozi basically means liberation. So to support dialogues and stuff like that within the communities. Yeah, so in a very brief nutshell, that's what I do. What was the second question?
The question was how your perspective on how colonialism relates to climate justice in Kenya.
Somebody already did a very good summary on the chat. Yeah, so that's why it's so much connected to climate justice. So Kenya, I don't want to say it still is. Kenya is a settler colony. So what that means is that colonizers who are here or who are there or who are still living feel entitled to the most what they call prime land, so they feel entitled to all of them. So some of the best lands in Kenya, as per neoliberal standards, so that is like land which has what they consider the fertile soil, the ones that have high yields, the ones that have the best terrain. They are not owned by even the richest Kenyans yet. Decades after paper, or what we call flag independence, the core of Kenya's struggle for independence was land and freedom. So that's just how glaring the ecological crisis for Kenya and for many settler colonies in Africa cannot be divorced from colonialism. So actually, the ecological crisis we are seeing right now in many parts of Africa is largely a colonial legacy. So it is decades and decades of deforestation in Mount Kirinyaga. It is decades and continuing genocide of removing people from rangelands under the guise of conservation, evicting people from forests, concentrating people in the cities, creating squatters and local refugees every now and then. So you are a citizen, but you are a refugee in your own country because you keep being evicted from one place to another. So you get evicted from a forest, you settle with another community, that community gets evicted, and that continues. So as a result, there are so many ethnic communities that do not exist anymore. So they've been cleansed as a result of that. So that lumping of people, these are Kalenjins, these are Luyas, these are, so some people have had to join dominant communities as a survival tactic. But you see what that does is that people lose their identity completely, which is another form of genocide, if you ask me. If you look at our laws, as much as we have a new constitution that was inaugurated in 2010, and Kenya brags about a very vibrant legal and policy framework at COP, at UNEA, and all those other high-level meetings, our seed laws are very colonial and they are very punitive. So our seed laws still criminalizes indigenous seeds. Farmers are at the mercy of corporations. So small and medium-term farmers have to depend on agrovets for seeds, for farm inputs, for fertilizers, which are red listed in the European market. Yet here, farmers are at the mercy of using these things. And these things destroy the soil structure, they poison the food, they poison the water sources. And more laws are still being piled up. Just recently, there was one about potato, and I think another one about the maize. And so you see, these punitive laws, you don't get a hang of them. They just blow up, and after they have been passed and they are low. So there's no process to engage. Then there's extraction. The mining corporations, I don't know the best words to use to create that picture, because it's a very bad picture. So a lot of people have lost their homes. If you go online, probably you could see the Owino Uhuru case about the best titanium in Kwale. What is currently happening in Lamu with the proposed coal plant, the LAPSET, and all the mining. Basically, in all remote areas, there is a possibility that there's one or more mining corporations taking advantage of the fact that it is a remote area. People don't understand due process, so they can come overnight, mine, and do whatever. So there are instances where people sleep in the night, they wake up, they realize someone was mining like below the home while you're asleep. So you wake up, you're coughing, your lungs are hurting, and you wonder why. You go outside, you realize there was a corporation that was mining overnight. So the mining and extractives sector has done so much and is still doing so much damage. Then there is, of course, the continued alienation of people from natural resources, which was colonial as well. So like in Kisumu, there's only one access point to the lake right now. All other access points either have private resorts, or there's a road, or there's the port, which random people are not allowed to go to. So it's exclusive to a specific class of people. Whenever, let's say, an animal or a human being falls into a dam, government rushes very fast to fence it and drive people away under the guise of creating security, like so that someone doesn't fall in there again and stuff like that. But it's just a tactic to kick people out of that. In Mombasa, people are being harassed on the beach. The last time I was there last year, around November, there are places where at 6 p.m. you're supposed to be out of the beach, or else you'll be roughed up by either the Navy or the police. Then after that, you see high-end parties at the beach after you common people have been chased away from the beach. Here in Nairobi, there are neighborhoods where I can't go. Like, I'll be asked so many questions. The last time I was in one of them, we were with my friends, and we were basically, it was like someone was interrogating a terrorist suspect or something. Yet this is Nairobi. It is a public road, but because we looked like we are not supposed to be there, we were questioned. It was like 30 minutes of question after question after question. What are you doing there? How did you think about coming here? Can you imagine being asked in your country that how did you just sit down and decide to come here? It's so ridiculous. Like, what kind of question is that? It's like walking on the streets and then someone asks you, okay, so why did you decide to walk on the street today? So that before I take too much time, the last thing is the green spaces are under attack at the moment. So in Nairobi, I think almost all of them are gone, or a very small percentage is remaining. So the national park has a very small percentage remaining. Karura Forest also has a very small percentage remaining, and City Park, I think Uhuru Park is gone. Central Park is safe to say that it is gone because they are fencing it. They are fencing Jivanji Gardens. They want to fence Ngong, the remaining bit of Ngong Forest. So that's the other way. That's the other tactic of keeping people away. You fence, put military people there, full combat with guns and dogs and stuff, and then charge people to go in. Actually, in Karura, we are contesting. There is a proposition to have people book an appointment, like make reservations. Like, it's so ridiculous. You have to make a reservation to access a green space. Like, you have to say, on Friday, we are coming to Karura. Then the management can say, no, on Friday you can't come to Karura. Please pick another date. The ones that used to be free, Arboretum, and there's another one near Kipande Road, they are charging. But the newest one near Kipande Road, I don't want to call it its name because the person who it is named after has a very dark history of massacring young men. So that one they were paying, but we contested, so now it's free to access. But Arboretum, people are still being charged. It used to be free. People used to be charged $50. Now it is, I think, $1 or more. Yeah, so there's a lot of environmental apartheid that's going on, and those are some of the tactics that are used.
Thank you so much, Irene. And yeah, I think just listening to that long list of injustices, from movement restrictions to the law, and yeah, who's keeping what land and who's allowed on a land and permissions and all of that. It's kind of like, this is some of the things that we talk about legacies that were left off. And I should have said, because as I was listening to you, I'm thinking, how and what do we do? And I should say also, Githuku got kicked off before, so I kind of just allowed for the conversation to continue, so that when after you finish, Irene, then Githuku will take over and finish for the rest of the time. But I'm interested in hearing how what you would suggest, because it's that long list of what's going on and what has been happening, the beach, and who's allowed the epistemic violence, as you kind of said, in terms of communities having to cluster together and push. Is some of the stuff that I'm also covering in my thesis, and it's really harrowing to hear that, but also the disappearances of people and what's happening around that. So what would you say is your call in a space such as this? Because I also know that you were involved in, at least you're invited to some of the COP26 conversations, and how those relate to whether you feel that you're part of a conversation or outside of, was an added or addition to. What would you say, what would your call be to us who are listening to you here, in terms of how we see and understand these legacies of colonization, and how we move forward beyond? And then once you've answered that, maybe in about 5 minutes up or less-ish, then I'll pass back to Githuku to kind of do his introduction and everything else he needs to share.
Okay. So my first of all is to have conversations such as this. But as we do them, they be very different from the other quote unquote high level conversations that deliberately erase lived realities of people, or just dismiss them and say things like there's no data, it's okay, so which institution documented it, it's not real, etc., etc. A lot of things are said to dismiss lived realities. And I have been to a few embassies as well in the country, and it's appalling that people just sit somewhere and claim they are supporting government to enact policies, blah blah blah, and all those things they're supporting government to do. And of course, we know they have their interests attached to it. But it is very ironical to sit in a country and just have no idea of what's happening on the ground, and just make policies that are very blind to realities. So my call is for people not to silence African voices, because for us the climate crisis is not something we are watching on TV or we are predicting. We are living it, and we've been living it for a while. People were saying it was an emergency that was coming. This side, it is a lived reality that is worsening. So it's not something that's being predicted. And the other thing is to amplify also the work and the voices of African organizers, again, without diluting them, because the other challenge I have had is I write an article, it becomes very, it is depoliticized, it is heavily diplomatic, and you wonder if you are the one who wrote that article in the first place. Or when you are called into a meeting and then you're given 1 minute to explain the realities of where you're coming from. It really doesn't make sense. The meeting I was telling you about was about the transport system, and you and probably other people who grew up here, no, we have never had a public transport system for a long time. So we are talking about public transport systems. We have people in the room who don't have an existing public transport system. So yes, yours may have problems, and it is okay. It is possible for the world to have the best systems. It is okay for you to call for it to be improved. But also don't silence those who don't even have one, like we don't even have a faulty one in place. So just give us time to explain why we got there and why with our conditions it is difficult to have working public systems because of how our institutions are and how, you know, the political and economic environment we are operating in. The other thing is that the support should be the solidarity. Groups such as this should give solidarity, not solidarity is different from what NGOs do, because they put you on a pedestal. So you take their money. There are things you can't say. There are support you can't give because it's a loud cost and blah blah blah. And this is not to excuse misappropriation of funds, but when you have funds so limited, with people organizing in other in situations where they're likely to face other forms of harm, and then I can't use that money to bail out youth if they have been arbitrarily arrested, for example. So I can't get legal aid for them because the fund is specifically for this. It makes organizing difficult. And also when the program is very, I don't know, if there's anyone in the room who's worked with NGOs, you know how their programs look like. Like it is so depoliticized, and some of the objectives and outcomes that they want are miracles, honestly speaking. You can't do some of these things in 3 months and expect certain outcomes. It's not possible. That's probably a magician would do something that programs people expect of us to do. So yeah, that's one of the challenges. So we get support that is as flexible as possible, that appreciates the environment that we are operating in, and the interconnection between the climate crisis and other socioeconomic factors, because you cannot expect communities, like for example, in the urban areas, you don't expect people in the informal settlements to quickly embrace conservation. These people have not seen green spaces ever since they were born. They just hear about them. They hear people go with their high-end cars to the park. They have never seen a park. They have lived in concrete. Someone was born, has lived in concrete until they are 25. That is if they are not killed by police. So they might as well die before they see green spaces. So expecting such people to embrace conservation within 3 months, when they are worried about what to eat and whether they'll catch a bullet, that's such a long shot. So for such groups, it takes some time to kind of work with them and to embrace it. For some of the groups we work with, they have taken over a year to appreciate ecological issues, and I understand them. I mean, if you look at the ghetto they have grown up in, it is understandable why they are so detached from ecology. It's not their fault, because even the schools they went to, it was just a concrete building with no space to play. And so these are teenagers or people in the very early 20s who have no idea how a green space looks like. And this is the first time they are seeing green spaces by us creating these spaces within their hoods. Yeah, so flexible support, don't depoliticize our work, please. Just put it out there as it is. It is our lived reality. We are not making things up, and no one would make such sad realities up. I mean, yeah.
Thank you so much, Asuwa. I'm nodding to a lot. I'm taking a lot of notes, and I wish I could type as quickly to put them in the chat as well, because there's some really powerful stuff that you said there about what it is. And I think that reality is what we've been trying to transmit and shout about also within the the space that we've created within the recent climate justice group. Because of time, I will pass it back to, and I'm not saying that to say we shouldn't, because it's all really, really good stuff. I'm going to pass it to Githuku, who's joined us, and maybe also just explain the coloniality element, because I know when I saw the title put out was around colonialism and coloniality, and we've tackled and spoken about what coloniality is in response to colonial legacies, and the way, reading from Walter Rodney, who talks about where the robber keeping the loot. He talks about coloniality being a form of power with its genesis in the colonial relation that now defines our culture, relations, knowledge production, labor, which is kind of really our very, very and main existence. So whilst we're talking about colonial legacies and coloniality, is to kind of hold and have this in mind. I'm going to pass it to you, Githuku, and thanks for messaging, because I'm like looking at several things at the same time, because I hadn't noticed that you got kicked out. Irene, if you can come back and show us your face, it'd be great, because I know we kind of had to do that because of the connection, but also this is the reality of being in places where connections can come in and dip out. But yeah, Githuku, if you can introduce yourself and also respond to those same questions around how colonial legacies relate to your work, and then we'll see how we do in the next maybe 10 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry, I got knocked out a little bit, but I've caught up with what my sister Asuwa was talking about. And yeah, my name is Ndungi Githuku. I come from a small village near the capital city. It's called Mwemuto. This is where I'm born and bred, and it's a beautiful place. And I think it was beautiful, even more beautiful, way back in the day. But things have been changing and changing really fast. I think I'll just start in 1884. 1884 is, for me, the undoing of what we are facing today. Because in 1884, 14 guys decided to meet in a room in Berlin and decided to split Africa and own the pieces that they chopped, sitting on a table where we had, of course, France, Germany, Great Britain, there was Portugal. Those were mainly the major players, and of course the United States. Yeah, and interestingly, there was no representative from this side of of Africa. Notably, also there was no woman, I think, sitting on that table, because maybe if there was, there would have been a voice of dissent saying, I mean, you can't go and chop off and split somebody's dwellings. What about their children? What about their environment? What about so notably it was just men who sat in that Berlin conference, and that is where everything, I think, for me, started going berserk. So we had places like the Congo, owned by King Leopold II of Belgium, and he owned this vast land of Congo, which is having problems up to today since that time. So I think that is one of the things, or where I would trace where the rain started beating us, where the timber and rubber and ivory and wealth, not only in Congo but in other places, was now being looted and taken to the west. And I think that coloniality comes in because that culture is what has been carried forward up to now. And then later we had the British East Africa company. It was a company that was ruling East Africa. So we had Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania being run as a company. And definitely the subjects who are the so-called natives were subjected to inhumane treatment, where all that they needed to do, or they had to do, was to work towards enriching those countries, or more so Britain, because they had to work towards growing coffee and tea and salt. We have a place called Magadi. That's where our salt comes from. And believe it or not, up to now, we have a railway line that runs from the hinterlands of Kenya straight to the port of Mombasa. And up to now, that railway is private. It's owned by a British company. And the salt that is harvested there in Magadi goes straight to the ships and into the sea, all the way across to Britain. So I want to trace it there, because from then on, then our culture again was erased. Christianity was brought in, and it started erasing our culture, our languages, and our people started hating themselves, and that is a damage, huge damage that up to now, I don't know how long it will take for us to recover. And those things, I think, when we look into the history of Kenya and the struggle for independence, we find that the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, people who felt it is now time for us to take up arms, go to the bush and fight. At least at that time, there were forests where the people could hide. There wasn't so much damage on our environment, and so they were able to go into the Mount Kenya forest. Right now, when you go to Mount Kenya forest, you find that it has actually, there's a lot of damage, a lot of destruction that has happened with the time. So the culture of destruction and self interest, where when you become a leader in Kenya and in Africa today, I'm sure in other places as well, but in this case in Africa, is that the people who are in charge make sure that they have all the interests of the country in their pocket, not in their hearts. And so they don't really care about the environment. They don't care about land. They don't care about land as in land for the people. They care about land for themselves. And I think this is carried forward from that inheritance, the inheritance of colonialism. So after colonialism, what we have had in Africa and in Kenya today is neo-colonialism. And the people who are in charge are more like puppets and people who are just holding our resources in brief for other interests, for countries that have interests in Africa and in Kenya. So I fast forward into when I started my activism, and I trace it back to the 90s. And that is when President Moi and the Kanu dictatorship had jailed mostly young men. There were some women as well, people like Jennifer, there was Christine Mulili, who went into the Nyayo House torture chambers. These where they were put just because they were speaking against, not really against, but organizing people so that we start debating about our country, about our constitution, and the people who were in charge definitely were really, really, really scared. And so they started arresting mostly university lecturers and students who had a divergent view on how Kenya should be ruled. And so I joined the Freedom Corner, where mothers, some of them illiterate, semi-illiterate, and some elites as well, because we had Wangari Maathai, who comes into play into this whole subject about our climate and the colonialism and how that links up. And so I was really inspired, not only by Wangari Maathai, but by the mothers of political prisoners, mothers who came to Nairobi from their different places and went to this park at the center, at the middle of Nairobi, which had actually been a terrain of struggle where Wangari Maathai, the late Professor Wangari Maathai, had opposed the building of the Kenya Times Tower. You know, President Moi wanted to have this park, and it's one of the very few ones. I think Asuwa has mentioned Jivanji, but we also have Uhuru Park, and we have Central Park, right adjacent to Uhuru Park. And so they wanted to grab it and take it over so that they build a huge building, which I think was going to be the tallest in Africa at that time. But Wangari Maathai single-handedly went and blocked that grabbing of the land. And thereafter is where the mothers came to Nairobi, and automatically this terrain of Uhuru Park became the symbolic place where it was carved out at a small corner where they named the Freedom Corner and said they're going to stay there until the children are released. So while I was at the Kenya Polytechnic studying, I joined the mothers of political prisoners there. And that's when I started learning more about our environment and about not only trees and not only the grabbing of land, but also the political environment. From there, I was able to learn also that it's all connected to colonialism, that nothing really changed. The only thing that changed were the faces. Definitely we have been debating about our history and how up to now, our children, including when we were in school, our history has always been twisted. It has been so mutilated to brainwash our children, those who are in school now and those who were in school then. So we have had these generations moving forward up to now, where we even sit for exams. Right now we are sitting, our children are sitting, students are sitting for the final exams, you know. And it is sad that the examiners will come and the papers will come, and the kind of history that they are going to talk about will have nothing to do with our people. So those who are doing the history papers, we passed or failed our exams just because all you need to do is to cram and memorize and not know and understand what history you are being taught. So, but at the Freedom Corner is where we started learning the true history, where books would be exchanged, where messages of solidarity would come from people like Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who actually were the first people to start the Release Political Prisoners Committee right there in London, while they were in exile because they had been bumped out of the country. And so from that time, moving on up to now, we've been having the same problem, because as far as I'm concerned, it was a success that political prisoners were released, apart from one, who was James Appiah Adhiambo, who came out of jail later, much later. But Kenya has continued to become a bigger jail, you know. So apart from those small prisons, like the maximum prisons that political prisoners had been thrown in for speaking for the people, on behalf of the people, Kenya, after they came out of prison, continued being this one big jail, a mental jail, psychological jail, where we are so busy, you know, fighting oppression, fighting police brutality, fighting the high cost of living, and while we are so busy doing that, we really do not have time. We really do not have time for our environment. We don't have time to think about the trees that are being stolen in the forests by big companies. We have huge companies which have got licenses to cut down trees. We don't have a system where you know, you cut one tree and plant 5. We don't have that anymore. So I'm connecting the struggles that we are having today with that, and saying that the struggles that we are facing today are disconnected to the environment that we live in. And so the whole crisis of the climate crisis that we are having is going to go on for as long as we have not liberated our minds, for as long as we have not liberated our land, for as long as we have not liberated our people. So long as we have not helped change the education system. So long as we have an education system that is so colonized, then we are going to be in the same problems. So one of my roles, which I think is a small, very small contribution to all this, is the use of art, the use of music, the use of poetry, the use of filmmaking. It's like a teardrop in an ocean, but at least it's one of the things, or maybe I can say that I am strong in doing, and which I'm also encouraging other young people to come on board and voice, continue voicing. So we need to continue educating our people against the system that is continuing to oppress us. So I guess maybe that is what I can say for now, but we can move on, and then I'll give more contributions. But in a nutshell, we are still colonized. The flag that we have is actually a beautiful one, very beautiful. We also have a very beautiful anthem, which is one of the best, they say, in the world. And if you want to catch it, then make sure you're there for the Olympics, because on the last day, sometimes when we win the marathon, that is the last song to be done in the Olympics. So, but what does it mean to us? It doesn't mean much. What does it mean to our children? It doesn't mean much. So it's just a beautiful lyrical anthem, and then after that, that's it. That's the end of it. So these are the things that really pain me, and also which I look forward to helping change. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Githuku. We want to pause for a little break, so I'll pass on, and then what we'll do after, when we come back, hopefully there'll be questions coming through that we can share. So some of those other things that you'd like to share with us will be done then, but I'm going to pass over to Caleb to tell us what to do.
Hey everyone. Yeah, no, it's nice and simple, but yeah, just while you're on your break, just think about how that made you feel, and if you want, when you come back, you can put that in the chat and we can share on that a little bit. But also, as Penny said, start thinking about questions, and yeah, start formulating those questions so that when we come back, you're ready, and put them in the chat, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Okay, cool. You have 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes break. So come back at 2 minutes past 7, please. All right, see you in a bit. Through the wind, and the smoke is rising. I
and I sing. Music is my ammunition. I fire down Babylon. Prison man, poverty, and Babylon system. We've been suffering all this time. All this time. I and I keep on chanting down till our children we face the front of that line. I've gotta say, songs of my ancestors still ricochet through the wind, and the smoke is rising through the words I and I sing. Music is my ammunition. I fire down Babylon. The songs of my ancestors still ricochet through the wind, and the smoke is rising through the words I and I sing. Music is my ammunition. I fire down Babylon. The truth and honesty will free our hearts and free our mind. Free our mind. So down our children can live together as one till the end of time. I've gotta say, the songs of my ancestors still ricochet through the wind, and the smoke is rising through the words I and I sing. Music is my ammunition. I fire down Babylon. The songs of my ancestors still ricochet through the wind, and the smoke is rising through the words I and I sing. Music is my ammunition. I fire down Babylon. Na 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 na. Talking about you and me, yeah. The dance people play. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Talking about you and me, yeah. The dance people play. Oh, the dance people play now. Every night and every day now. And never meaning what they say, yeah. Never say what they mean. First you wonder where your hours in your concrete towers. Soon you'll be covered up in flowers in the back of a black limousine. People walking up to you, singing glory, hallelujah. Down the twilight how you do you, oh, oh, in the name of the Lord. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Talking about you and me.
Welcome back, everyone. Apologies there. I took a longer drink than I thought I was allowed. So now we're gonna go into a conversational Q&A. So I'm gonna allow anyone that has any questions to pop them in the chat. You can also specify someone specifically you would like to direct your question to, but just not to waste the very precious time that we have with one another. I would like to invite Githuku, if you'd like to talk about more of what you've been saying, given the fact that you've had a bit of a shorter time to share with us. If there's anything else that you think it's important for us to know from what your thoughts are.
Well, maybe the little thing I can add is to concur with Asuwa that solidarity is key. I have seen solidarity work, and especially with the experience that I gave of the Freedom Corner. These were humble women, you know, from the rural, from the farms, and they came to Nairobi, and because of their determination and because they were clear on what their goal was to go back home with their children. For me, it's not a small thing. It's a big thing in the sense that they were able to rally and mobilize the whole world, you know, to give solidarity and to lobby and to pressure the government of President Daniel Arap Moi to release their children. And it happened. So it took a long time because it took a period of about 1 year where they, in part, were on hunger strike, and they created this attention around the country, and people started saying, wow, we are in solidarity with these mothers. And then after that, the whole world, you know, started pressurizing the dictatorial regime to release the prisoners, political prisoners. So I'm citing that in mind that solidarity works. So long as we are clear and we know that we have a common problem, and this common problem is a global problem, then with solidarity, we can be able to change and to make sure that at least we don't have more damage. At least if we can first and foremost hold and put everything on track right now, everything on a halt right now, it will be much better than to continue watching from the periphery as everything is getting destroyed, as everything is getting messed up. And so with that, of course, comes the need for political change in various places, in the change of political leadership in various places, including the country here. And I think so long as we are organized and we are able to speak in one voice, we can be able to little by little, like Wangari Maathai kept saying, it is the little thing that you do that matters. You don't have to think of like we're going to change this big thing. It is the little thing that one is able to contribute. And so long as we agree on some of these things and then come to the fore together, then this solidarity is what is needed right now, so that the whole world speaks with one voice moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got one question for Irene. Can you expand on why the laws constituted during colonial times have not been repealed?
Like Githuku said, we had flag and paper independence, but the people who took over on behalf of the ones who left. So there wasn't that much change, and even now, people who sponsor bills into law or policies are still the same people. And so there could be a change here and there, but some very punitive clauses will still remain. So it's very difficult to do that. when the people behind the laws, if you do advocacy, there's one thing that government says most of the time. They say they are waiting on development partners to support the process. When they delay review of policy, they say the same thing. They say they are waiting for support from development partners to help review. So who are these development partners? They are the same colonizers, who, if their grandfathers and parents are dead, they are the neo-colonizers that Githuku was talking about. So that's why most of them have not been repealed. Also, you don't expect people who benefit from these laws to repeal them. They want repealing them means a loss of business for them, so they can't repeal them, especially the ones on land. We have had a very big fight on the land policy. It's been years and years since it was reviewed. An attempt to review it was faced by a lot of circumstances, so we have not been able to do just a review, not a repeal or anything. Just a review to see how far we've come. It has been impossible to do that. There's another person who asked if the salt is under the British crown. Yes, the royalties are paid to Elizabeth.
I'm gonna jump in after because I'm also trying to multitask. But thank you, Asuwa and Githuku as well. I think I wanted to just add to that point on what else is kind of like continuing, because as I was listing all of the issues that are going on in Kenya from Asuwa and also from Githuku on like damage to waters, damage to land, fertilizer that's red listed, extractions and all of these things. I'm like, this is definitely some of what was going on before. But I mentioned the issue of what's it called, restriction of movement. In my PhD, where I'm kind of like digging into colonialism, one of the things that was installed or started was passes, what has now become IDs, where stated who you are, fingerprint, everything, but you had to get permission to move from one place to another. We have the same thing that we do in terms of borders, from going from one border or one country to another, but that identity or pass that was started back then, I felt that that's also a little bit of what Irene was talking about. There is class issues tied in with that in terms of who's allowed to be in what kind of neighborhoods. But that concept of certain people not looking at they belong somewhere is very much tied to that history of certain people are allowed and others are not. I also wanted to just bring in, because that question, my mom is also on the call, and Dr. Christine Kahigi reminds me to kind of do the remain professional, but that question that has just been sent there, because when Githuku was speaking about education, the mutilation of the history, my mom, who's a history teacher, we've often had conversations about that and what that meant in terms of what we taught and what continues, the continuation of all of that. So I wanted to at least acknowledge that my mom is here, and I've noted that she's put that comment to Githuku about not to forget to mention about mothers who were attacked by the riot squad and tear gassed until they had to take their clothes off, Wangari Maathai being one of them. But also I wanted Githuku to at least acknowledge how many times or how often he slept in the police cells over his time of being an activist and an activist because of speaking out or being politicized, and that danger of what happens, because I think even a conversation I was having with Irene the other day of disappearances of activists and people who are speaking against the government, that is also the reality of what it means to speak out and not to forget that. So I was kind of hoping that I could pull that in whilst I'm acknowledging ma'am, and acknowledging some of those histories and comments that Githuku made around history and education. But I also added the documentary that we did on there. But I also wanted to say thank you for all of what's been shared already, and how deep some of this stuff is touching on some of us who are, I'd say, in the diaspora. Yeah. So mine was more of a comment, not question, but Githuku, Irene, jump in. And also I'm going to keep adding the links to Githuku's and Irene's social media handles, because there was something about how do people follow that. Back over to you, Melanie.
Yeah, I think just coming from the perspective of young activists that are currently organizing around solidarity, it would be really helpful for us to hear from both of you any advice that you have in building good solidarity networks that are accessible and that really embody the necessary work that needs to happen. Because as you've mentioned, the history of our struggles have been erased, and we really need support from those who have had experience. So for all the young people out there hoping to make change, it is important for us to hear your words.
Githuku is the uncle here, so I was waiting for him to start. Is Githuku still on the call?
Yeah. I'm still here. Sorry. Yeah, I think Penny has talked about. It's important to mention how the mothers were treated when they came to Nairobi, and one of the reasons that we, the young people, were there was to make sure that we protect our mothers. And it's because we knew at that time the height of a clamor for change in this country. That was early 90s. Kenya was slowly becoming a police state, has always been. But at that time, the police were really used or misused by the state to make sure that first you don't know who you're talking to, and you have to be careful what you say, because they were all over, civilian police. At that time, there was a branch called the special branch, which was very fierce. Like they would pick you up from your classroom. They would pick you up from anywhere, from your home. They would pick you up in the streets, and once you are picked, nobody knows where you've gone. So we were living in a state of fear and terror. So it was such a time to be a Kenyan then. It's not that that has subsided, because today what is happening is that we have more of police disappearances. Right now we have a river called River Yala, where quite a few bodies are being discovered there. Like nobody knows who is killing the people and taking them to River Yala. So we still have police being misused. But during this time of the Freedom Corner in 1991, the young people, myself included, went there because we knew the police have no shame. This government, or the government at that time, had no shame and were ready to beat up the women, which they did. The first night that they came was on the third night of the Freedom Corner. And so they came and rounded off the mothers and took them, each of them, to their homes. It didn't matter whether you came from the end of the country or where, but they rounded them up and took them, each of them, back home. But these gallant mothers actually were there the following day. They came back. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have they didn't have access to fax. Fax was what was the in thing at that time. but somehow all of them in the same spirit decided to come back to Nairobi. And that's when now we plugged in proper and said, no other time is the government going to kidnap our mothers and take them wherever. So we will be there and protect them from the brutality. The police kept rounding up, the little space. They would come with intimidation. They would come with batons. They would come with their tear gas. And so eventually, when the pressure mounted and the outside world now started talking, is when the order was given by the president that he doesn't want to see them there again. And so I was there when the police attacked, and there was a lot of tear gas. There was a lot of gunshots. They were shooting in the air to scare, the people who were rallying around the Freedom Corner, people who were shouting and people who were actually protesting. And this little space was invaded in broad daylight. And I told Penny this little story where my sister was supposed to wed on the weekend that was following, and I had a new pair of shoes because I was to be part of the party, or the bridal party, and I lost one of the shoes, and that was one of the things that I remember on that occasion. But the police were merciless. I think they had been given orders like, if you don't do this, then you lose your job or something. I don't know, but Wangari Maathai actually broke her neck. Some other women also, really got injured. But we were there holding our hands together and building this heavy human chain. But they still managed to break through and throw more tear gas in there. So eventually, the whole place was looking like a disaster. Things scattered all over, women screaming, and eventually some of the women decided they've had enough, and so they're going to strip naked. And so they stripped naked, and this actually is what stopped the police from attacking, because in African custom, when your mother strips naked, it means that they're giving a curse to you. And so this is when the police, even with all the orders that they got, would not even directly look into the tent, into this space. And so they would look away. And I think that is where I also felt like the strength of African customs, because that was the end result. And so this was really something that shocked the nation, and it also shocked the world. It also shocked the head of state, because after that, the mothers were given refuge at the All Saints Cathedral, and it is from there that the protest continued. So in the bunker of this huge church next to the Freedom Corner. And so, long story short, is to say that resistance is something that that works, so long as people are clear in their minds. Resistance is something that works. And that's where I was connecting that resistance and being organized, because we cannot keep agonizing all the time. It's time to organize ourselves so that we are on the same page, and so that we're in the same frame of mind, and resist towards the change, the kind of change that we really want. And I have seen it work. I have experienced it. The Kenya Land and Freedom Army, the Mau Mau also did the same, and they resisted and went to the forest. And so for like 10 years, and actually the one of the still living legends, Field Marshal Muthoni Kirema, is still alive. I talked to her yesterday. Once in a while I call her just to hear her voice and to reconnect with her spirit of struggle. And so what she was telling me is that you should continue guarding the freedom that we fought for, because we stayed in the forest for 20 years. For her, she says 20 years because she counts day and night. And so it makes sense when you say 20 years. And so it wasn't easy. And the Freedom Corner also wasn't easy. The struggle for the liberation of South Africa against apartheid was not easy. No struggle has been easy. So mine is to say it cannot be easy, but with solidarity, it is so easy to come together and to speak in one voice. Yeah.
Not sure if Penny would. Oh yes.
Yeah, I was just seeing the question. I mean, there's brilliant people. If there's anybody, yeah, please look at the chat as well, in terms of what people are saying in some of the question. And I've seen what you put in there, Melanie, as well. But there was a reframing question from Caleb. You could have just jumped in and said something, Caleb. That he said, I wanted to understand if there's a source, news, activist, social media, or otherwise, where we can find these stories and experiences more regularly, so as to remain informed about what is happening in Kenya. Yeah, I'll put this out to you because I know what I'd say, but again, I'll put it out to you. I know we've got a few minutes left to then do a close and yeah, and thank you. But yeah, I'll put it to either you, Githuku, or Irene, in terms of if there is such spaces that exist that people can learn about all of this, aside from the links of your social media that we put in there.
Yeah, so there's Ukombozi review. You can check it online, where some of our articles have been published. There's Rope. I saw someone put in a link about the article I did on ecological justice. He's a sister of Rope. I am forgetting its name. But there's a composite review. There's Rope. There's Until Everyone is Free. It's a podcast about the legacy of Yogama Pinto. And then there's a new podcast coming up. It's called Liberating Minds, where people are giving reflections on some of the books that we have at the library. So the first episode is on a book called A Prison Notebook, which was written by one of the political prisoners during the time that Githuku is talking about. I was trying to find the links. You can find ecological justice online too, on Facebook and on Twitter. There's also a Facebook group for ecological justice that you can join and see what the people are doing.
Thank you. I don't know whether Melanie, I think you were going to do some, I've also seen my mom put down that, which is true. We are planning to start recording some of these experiences. I know some of them are definitely documented in my thesis, but we're planning to start recording some of this stuff and putting it out, because I struggled also to find content in terms of the history of resistance and movements and also the impact, but even though you can see it, so it's not always written about. So that's been put out there. I know there's kind of mention about what's happening on Friday, but I want to pass it to Melanie before I kind of close it. Or is it Caleb? I'm not sure how we're going to do this bit. I don't like this bit when it comes to an end, because I'm looking at the clock and at the same time thinking, well, there's so much more to say and here as well. But yeah, go on.
There is so much to say, but the only thing we can say now that is over, it's very, very much thank you to the speakers for agreeing to come together with us to learn from you all, because as we know, the climate ecological emergency is a racist struggle, and we need to know what the legacies of colonialism mean to those experiencing those in the global south. So hearing those voices is the most important thing to do at the moment. And please, if you would like to be part of the space, just email me. I've sent a message in the chat just explaining what the race and climate space does. And we co-create spaces like this one so that normal people can come together to realize and embody solidarity in a way that is actually representative of our global family. So thank you everyone for taking the time to be here with us, and our learning continues. I think that's how I feel. Our learning continues. Is there anything you would like to add, Penny?
Yes.
There's also an event happening on Friday, which I think you're going to introduce, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I was just about to say to Mama D, who's not been well, and thanks for joining us regardless. Some of you who've been coming to our spaces are familiar with Mama D. And I was going to say, could you please put the event on the chat, because I couldn't copy paste it from the private chat we've been having. So yeah, it's there. It's on Friday. It's deepening sessions that we said, because what we feel like this 1.5 hour does open up certain things, but for those of us who have capacity, time, and would like to delve a little bit deeper on some of these topics, Mama D holds a space for us with the race and climate justice. So and it's on Friday, it's in the evening. Tap on there and join on Friday, this Friday evening. But coming back to this space, I want to just say thank you to everybody who's been with us, who attended, who registered, and including my mom. Again, I know you've kind of stayed quiet and you're just putting stuff in the chat, who's joined us in Kenya. My mom's been participating in a lot of the racial justice network stuff. So she was also she was part of the Decolonizing Education Kenya alongside Irene and Githuku, but also part of my documenting history of colonialism and resistance. Her and Githuku I've worked that and done that together. So there's a bit of a camaraderie family thing going on over here. So thanks for joining us and staying here. But especially to also to Melanie and Caleb for supporting, and Mama D also for planning the behind the scenes stuff and making this happen and making all these beautiful images and stuff. But Irene and Githuku, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, Githuku, I know you're campaigning, so for you to be sitting still and not having people, I'm not even sure whether you're outside somewhere or waiting to go back and do a talk somewhere. So for you to join us, yep, you are. For you to be able to join us here and to be present and bring your full self as you normally do in your talks and your history of what you've done and what we need to do as well is a real honor. So thank you. And Irene, you spit facts, and I love this when we were on a panel together in Kenya back then. And your way and boldness, I think, and also militant stance that you take about saying and sharing what you need to say in terms of your knowledge. So thank you again for bringing all that knowledge and all that, those experiences and sharing them with us here at this time in the evening. And hopefully it is recorded. So some of that stuff, what we've got here might be cut up into little pieces. We've got Sarai, who's our comms on board, and Boara, who's here as well. So it'll be chopped up and perhaps shared in little bits elsewhere. So yeah, so thank you so much. And hopefully everybody's walking away having learned something that they didn't know. As we've been told, join some of our social media, but follow Irene and Asuwa, because they put stuff out as well. And keep coming to our spaces, because there's more. I think we've got others planned on Brazil and other stuff around solidarity. So there's more to come. We do these meetings once every month, the last Tuesday of the month, I believe. So thank you. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. That's it. Yeah, Mommy's coming on. All right, bye everyone.
Bye everyone.
Thank
Thank you. I
you.
enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom, for sneaking in very last minute. Oh, Sai was here as well.
Bye, people.
Bye, Irene.
Bye.
Bye, Githuku.
Bye. Let us remember to remember, not to forget. Bye. Love you.
Bye.
Love you.
Yay.
Bye, Sai.
No, Sai. Hi, Sai.
Hi,
I
sir.
remember Sai.
Yeah.
How's the little one doing? Oh,
Can't-
Sai, the audio is off. Oh.
Yeah. something like that.
Bye. Good night.
Right, good night.
Sai babysitting.
Yeah. Yeah. Ma'am, you've got two links on. What happened? You've got
Yeah,
screens on.
two.
Dr.
Because because I was using, I'm streaming through the phone on the laptop. So the phone is on, the laptop is on.
Right, okay.
That's why. Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to have bigger images on the laptop rather than on the phone.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming. I'll speak to you later.
yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you.
bye. Is this Maya on the other on?
No, it's not.
No, it's not Maya.
Somebody's left it on.
We're just waiting for people to leave the space now.
Yeah. Cool. You could take my mom out. I don't think you mind. Okay, she's gone.
Oh wow, that was so good. Let me just stop the recording. Bye.